Hey friends, if this is your first time on my channel, you are most definitely welcome. Please be sure to hit that subscribe button. It only takes 2 seconds and you guys will know every time I post a video. If you are a returning watcher, thank you so much for sticking with your girl, and you know I'm back with that fire. Now let's talk about what taking 2 gap year looks like, and that's essentially what I did. So we have another nice little graph here, but what this is going to be is everything's going to be moved up. So let's get into it. So essentially for me, and this was kind of essentially my timeline, right, where this was senior year for me, because you know Stanford's on a quarter system, so we end literally after everyone else has graduated. And then, you know, this was essentially, we'll say my gap year technically started here. We'll say technically year 2. So essentially this is what my timeline looked like, where I'm finishing up senior year, we have my summer, gap year officially starts in September, goes all the way to summer, then I start my second gap year, and then let's put in where medical school starts. It's super important. And medical school starts around here. And for me, instead of applying as I graduate from college, I would be applying as I go into my second gap year, or as I approach my second gap year. So I would be applying right here. All right, so for me, and what would happen for you if you were doing 2 gap years, essentially would be your senior year, you want to spend your senior year doing well in school, which is what I spent my senior year doing. I really didn't want any distractions. I didn't want the stress of thinking about the MCAT or applying, and I just really wanted to focus on acing my senior year, and that's what I did. So that's what I did, and then you graduate. For me, I graduated here. Yay, little cap and gown with the tassels. And after graduating, I began working full-time. So remember, as I said, in your gap year, you want to do something productive. So I started working. And of course, I still work, but I'm just to say for the summer, I worked full-time, and I just had a lot on my plate, and I really couldn't take the MCAT or study effectively for the MCAT. So ideally, in your first gap year, that's when you can actually, you know, spend time without taking a full load coursework to, you know, study for the MCAT. You can prepare your application materials, or if you're doing 2 gap years, you may be doing a post-bac, right? So the potential things you can have going on here is work, post-bac, MCAT studying, but it definitely gives you a lot more freedom, right? If you're doing a post-bac, chances are you have some kind of structured post-bac, and it's kind of essentially like being in college, and you still will have to find time and space to take and study for the MCAT. But I didn't go the post-bac route in terms of like a full-on post-bac, so I can't really give you a great breakdown of what that timing would look like for you. So I can really only talk from a perspective of going into the working world. So as you guys know, I did do a semi post-bac. I was working and taking physics at the same time. So from September, I was doing work, school, and MCAT. Work, school, MCAT. And I did that all up until here. And at the same time, and this is so important, if you are graduating out of college and you may not be doing a post-bac, or you're not quite sure what your relationship with your professors will be like once you graduate, I think August is a perfect time to ask for recommendations. For me, I just had this fear that, you know, my professors or whatever would forget who I was, which is, now that I think about it, a very unreasonable fear at all. But I just didn't want to like a situation where I couldn't get a hold of a professor a year later. So the summer after graduating, literally fresh out of the classes, I asked my recommenders for recommendations, and I had them upload them to Interfolio. At the same time, I also drafted my personal statement. I made my first draft of my personal statement there, and over, you know, the course of the year, I worked on it. Really, to be honest with you, when I got serious about my application materials was here. I really started getting organized for my application process. And that's when I started making my extracurricular activities, really started drafting those, putting the hours together, getting contact names, and really everything. And for me, I took my MCAT right here. I took my MCAT here, and I got my MCAT dates, MCAT score here. But by the time I had gotten it, I had already applied to medical school. And as I said before, medical school the application process is a whole year. So really, you start getting secondaries around this time, and then interview season. And while interview season is happening, you should, still be productive and do something useful with your time. Maybe it's working, maybe you're finishing up your post-bac, whatever it is, you are doing something productive during that time. So it's super important to do something useful. Medical schools will ask you what you're doing, and they will want to know what's going on with you currently right now. So it's super important to make sure that you have something to say, because in my interviews they would ask me, oh, what have I been doing since graduating? And by the time you interview, if you're taking 2 gap years, interview season for you will be in your 2nd gap year. So you have a whole year to account for, to explain to them, versus in the other timeline I showed you, your gap year is while you're interviewing. So really, you don't have much stuff outside of college to talk about. But for me, I had a lot more to talk about outside of college because I had been working in the real world for a real year. So I felt like a lot more of who I was really focused on senior year and my gap year as well. Like I was saying, interview season ends around March. And after it ends around March, of course, you're gonna hear back, start to hear from schools around October 15th. And for me, because I had heard back by October 15th, I stopped my interview process and my application process here because I didn't feel like there was a need to interview anymore. So my application process ended here. For some people, it may continue to go on up until March, but I was blessed and lucky that I stopped interviewing after October. So now really all I'm focused on is financial aid and getting those packages and making sure that, schools give me the money I need so I can go to their school. As you guys can see, your 2nd gap year is really essentially spent applying to medical school, right, and interviewing, versus your 1st gap year is really kind of getting your life together after graduating. It's, taking the MCAT, getting organized, maybe finishing up some classes you have, taking a post-bac, and you also, I think, have more time and energy to work on secondaries as well, because during that summertime, assuming you're not taking classes, you will have time to really fully focus on your secondaries. For me, it was still hard because I was working a lot of overtime while I was submitting my secondaries, but they got done, and I really was glad that I had finished physics I finished physics in June. I was really happy that I finished physics by the time that secondaries came around, because I don't know how I would have balanced, that plus school. Honestly, I don't know how I balanced studying for the MCAT in school, but anyways, I don't know. By April, you decide where you're going, and you make the commitment, decide where you're going, and then July, August, medical school begins, and then you are a M1. Yay! That's when your M1 year starts. So I hope this video was helpful in terms of, just talking out the timeline and what it looks like for you to have 1 gap year or 2 gap years. Please be sure to comment below and let me know if anything was unclear. If you have any more questions, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you watch this full video and you are still not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe now and comment below and let me know the kind of videos you want to see. Thank you.